Hello there. Today I watched the new film Inside Man, and now I want to tell you about it. Inside Man is an undercover detective story set in New York in the 1980s. It follows disgraced detective Bobby Bellucci as he infiltrates a crime family and attempts to take them all down. It was written by Costa Kondalopoulos and directed by Danny A. Abekasser. It stars Emile Hirsch as Bobby Bellucci and follows his narration of the undercover operation from start to finish. The film opens with Bobby outside of the Gemini Lounge, talking to the audience and remembering the events of the last year in pieces. He tells us a story to pass the time while he waits, and then we flash backward a full year so we can understand the story better. We're told how Bobby disgraced himself initially by beating a man up, and we see his anger issues put on full display for the world to see. We then watch Bobby mope for a bit, cry to his ex about changing his ways, and then accidentally bump into and make a good impression on one of the DeMio crime members, which kicks off the main story. The journey consists of three main types of scenes. The first is tense scenes where Bobby meets with the crew members and they discuss business. The second type is montage scenes where Bobby details the criminal escapades of all the different crew members and explains all their little quirks, and the third is scenes of Bobby committing different criminal acts in order to fit in with the gang. There are also a few scenes of Bobby arguing with his partner and his boss, and talking with the bartender at the Gemini Lounge. There is one sex scene that comes out of nowhere and it goes as fast as it came. Outside of Bobby, the story doesn't really do character development. We don't learn anything about his wife, partner, or most of the people he interacts with in the crime family. We're given a brief description of their crimes and personalities, but we don't actually get to know them. The story is more about Bobby's personal journey and the emotions he went through as he took on this mission. The story is consistent from start to finish and doesn't have any major holes in it, but it also isn't exciting. The reason none of it is exciting is because of how they started the film. They told us right from the start that Bobby was safe and that he wouldn't be in any real danger until he got back to the year mark. It takes all the bite out of the dangerous moments for Bobby, and you never actually spend enough time with anyone else in the film to invest in their outcomes. It ends up feeling like reading someone's journal about the case and never feels like experiencing the emotional journey that Bobby went through. You never feel scared for him, they don't spend enough time on his relationship, so you never invest in that, which leaves big thrill moments, which this film is severely lacking in. There are a couple of murders and one scene of a guy being tortured, but they tend to be quick moments that don't focus on the violence, the atmosphere, or even the victim. They quickly paint the picture of what happened and then exit stage left as soon as possible. The cast doesn't get to do much, but they do a decent job of the roles and emotions that they're given. Most of them are playing generic rowdy thugs that commit crimes, tell dirty jokes, and drink a lot. None of them get the chance to stand out because the film never develops any of their characters and never has any big moments for them to stand out in. The only exception to this is Emile Hirsch. As the main character, he gets the lion's share of the screen time and he gets to do a number of big emotions throughout the film. He gets to rage out, bawling his eyes out, acting terrified, and walking around like he's on cloud 9. He plays the emotions in a highly dramatic way and does a convincing job as Bobby. His character is your typical alcoholic hair-trigger cop who wants to get the bad guys at all costs and ends up going too deep. He has a lot of emotional reactions to the things he's forced to do and ends up highly changed by the time he spent undercover. The visual journey was fairly straightforward, but wasn't interesting or exciting outside of the performances of the actors. It plays out like a generic retrieval quest with Bobby running around between the bar, the apartment where he meets with his partner, and the apartment that the crew operates out of. The sets and locations look like normal streets, bars, and buildings in New York, with brownstone buildings dominating most of the streets and the bar they visit being a slightly outdated looking watering hole. Bobby and the crew dress like normal men in the 80s, and the cars they steal and drive are classic muscle cars. The colors tend to be fairly muted, the locations aren't that interesting, and they don't make good use of the environment, and the thrilling moments are fairly short and lack impact. They imply gore more than show it, and the murder and torture don't make much of an impression because of it. The one thing the visual journey does well is capturing the actors' performances in full detail. There are lots of close-ups of their faces, and they'll switch to mid and wides when they need to get a bigger physical response. You can always tell how Bobby's feeling because of it. Sound-wise, the film is dominated by silence and the occasional rock and roll song, crime jazz tune, or eerie tension track. There are both original songs and instrumental tracks, but neither manages to make a significant impact on the scenery. The music comes in quietly and adds a little bit to the atmosphere, but ultimately ends up going unnoticed in the background most of the time. At times, it does feel like they're going for an 80s buddy cop feel with the crime jazz, but the music is never prominent enough or loud enough to make a big impression. Biggest feature audio-wise was the narration by Emile Hirsch that takes place throughout the entire film. The audio is a little bit canned and at times it is a bit echoey, but the narration does give us a good insight into Bobby's mental state. Overall, Inside Man is an incomplete story with decent production quality. The story goes over the details of an investigation into the DeMio crime family, and we spend a little bit of time with Bobby on his journey. But the film fails to make Bobby into an interesting character, and it never provides a good reason to get invested in the story. The film has a sensible visual journey with a soundtrack that tries to provide the right emotions, but neither manages to stand out in any way. It fails to be entertaining as a whole, and it isn't trying anything new. If you like detective stories about undercover operations, there are endless better films out there to take up your time. As for a rating for this film, I'd give it a 5 out of 10, and remember, these are just my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Bye-bye!